Tank Davis made the first defence of his full WBA championship against arguably his best opponent yet in Frank Martin. Despite losing the majority of the early rounds, Tank's fight-altering power was put on display once again as he knocked Martin out in the 8th round. Let's take a look at all the notable things both men showed leading up to it. Martin was focusing heavily on the bodywork early, most notably using his jab to occupy the high guard of Davis and keep it there, to then come around the elbow with a left hook to the closed side of the body. Not only was this good for trying to slow down the very explosive Tank, it also allowed Martin to take back some of the ring whenever he was being pressured into a corner. Once this was established, he began to mix up the exchanges by bringing the hook upstairs instead, or following the jab with a straight, which meant he didn't become predictable and therefore made it more difficult for Tank to find counters. Fighting behind the jab was evidently the game plan Martin and his team devised for this fight, taking advantage of his longer, taller frame to keep Tank at the end of his punches and minimise the risk of being hit clean. In the early rounds he did this very well, maintaining the distance and never being stationary during exchanges. This allowed Martin to find counters as Tank overextended trying to reach the target. And when he built off the jab in open space, his combination punching was causing Tank a lot of trouble, purely through consistently moving and switching up the target often with different weapons. Davis and us viewers quickly came to realise that Martin was showing him a little too much respect, however. He would often try to rush away from the corners if he wasn't able to push Tank back, and was occasionally showing big defensive reactions, which would put him out of position just from seeing the threat of a punch. This would only serve to boost Tank's confidence even in the rounds he was losing. The most consistent counter available to Davis was a rear uppercut, either to the body or head. One of Martin's tricks to try keep himself off the ropes was to try reverse the position from his straight, meaning he would step through with the straight and attempt to pivot around the lead leg of Tank to steal the centre of the ring from him. Though, whether it be out of habit or in anticipation of Tank countering with a different punch, Martin was always ducking on the pivots and in turn placing his upper body and head into the path of the rear uppercut, something Davis quickly picked up on and began to punish. It was clear Martin was beginning to tire in the middle rounds. His movement and defensive reactions became laboured and he was being a stationary target more and more often. Due to this, Tank ramped up the pressure and was taking more opportunities to get on the inside and put together some of his best work, playing the hooks and straight punches off each other, alternating which hand initiates the exchanges and hooking on Martin's exits to catch him circling, all added up to trap Martin and force him inside the pocket. Alongside utilising parries to nullify the straight punching, Tank could either parry the punch away and fire his own into the opening left undefended, or use the time it took Martin to reset to force himself into his preferred range. Tank's shot selection created openings for him whenever he had Martin against the ropes. Much like Martin did with his combinations in open space, Davis would create unpredictability by constantly switching which punches and with what hand he was throwing, alongside dropping to the body often. This took away any possibility Martin had of defending effectively, as he was almost having to guess where to put his guard next, and therefore negating any counter opportunities he might have been able to find, due to the fact he was hyper-fixated on defending. This was displayed in the knockout. As Martin had left his lead hand out in an attempt to maintain the distance, Tank came around with a lead hook which forced Martin to pull his guard back up. In doing so, a path was left open for Davis to come up the middle with an uppercut, hurting Martin before finishing the fight with a straight which knocked the challenger out.